our right to vote. And knowing that our voting system is fair and accessible to everybody, regardless of whether or not they're disabled, whether or not they're elderly, or if they need assistance. And what is happening here really is you're seeing a real effort by some people in the state of Texas to curtail some of those rights for some of our residents of Cameron County, residents of Texas. So I think standing together to support the rights of all of us to ensure that our vote counts is something that I applaud and something that I certainly stand for personally. These efforts are wrong, in some ways immoral, and really are going to ensure that the complete opposite happens, which is some people may get elected that should not have been elected in the first place because certain people are not allowed to vote. We've seen this historically. We've seen this as civil rights issues in the 60s. We saw this in the early 1900s, and we saw this in the mid 1800s. Mid 1800s when blacks were not allowed to vote. We saw this in the early 1900s when women were not allowed to vote. And we saw it in the 60s when we were fighting for our civil rights and our rights as minorities. And with that, I just want to say I stand with Representative Dominguez and Representative Lucio, two of my really good friends. And I support their efforts in Washington. I just want them to stand strong, keep doing what you're doing. And with that, I will introduce State Representative Eddie Lucio and State Representative Alex Dominguez. Thank you, guys.
Se me hace que alguna otra reunión que tuve en alguna ocasión.
There's somebody that's from the press that needs to mute their microphone. Michael, can you go ahead and do that? Thank you. Continue, please. I'm sorry, Reps.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to see y'all. It's always good to see not just a friendly face, but friends of ours, genuine friends. And we know that you're carrying on much of the work. What this bill would do would certainly impact your activities on a countywide basis for all of y'all, especially those that sit on the elections committee. I can tell you it's been a great working with my colleague, Representative Eddie Lucio III. We meet every morning. We have breakfast together. Actually, we sit right next to each other. We talk about what we're doing here in the county, what we're doing at the state level, and of course, with our families too, because it's very hard to do when you don't have your families with you. So we're very grateful for their support. Eddie?
Well, Alex, it's also, it's memorable to be up here with you and be fighting this good fight. There's a lot of misinformation from those that are being critical of our participation in this protest, if you want to call it that. There was a lot of efforts to have responsible, if you want to call it, election reform during the regular session. All attempts by Democrats were ignored to, build continuous safeguards for the election process. During the special session, when the bill was first heard, Democrats were highly engaged in trying to forge a compromise and do what is responsible and reasonable for voter integrity, and they were ignored. And I just want to speak on my own behalf. There are a few things that would motivate me to leave the state, and I'm sure Alex would agree. Very few things, but voting is at the top of that list. That is fundamental as Americans, is our right to participate in the electoral process. And this bill is not about voter ID, which seems to be a lot of the basis for the hate mail I'm getting. This bill is about voter suppression. During COVID, we had to do things like drive-through voting, extending voting hours, and the like, that did great things for us to increase the participation in the electoral process. And that scared those in leadership right now in the state of Texas. They don't want additional participation in voting. They want to keep the status quo, and that's wrong. And that is why my colleagues and I are here. We need to make sure that every Texan, regardless of ability, socioeconomic class, has the ability, has the opportunity to vote, which is fundamentally American.
Thank you, Representative Lucio Dominguez. And I want to introduce our County Judge, Eddie Trevino. He's here to give us a few words really quick.
Good morning, Jared. Everybody, good morning. Thank you all for joining us. Jared, thanks for putting this together. Reps, Alex and Eddie, we are praying for you guys, and we appreciate the stance that you guys have taken. It's a shame that it had to come to this, and that it may have to come to this again and again, as they keep referencing, but somebody mentioned that that our democracy is at stake, and there is no doubt. And you guys now have put Texas at the front lines, and I'm hoping and praying that there will be some common sense and some ability to discuss the actual issues. Eddie just referenced the fact that this was a voter suppression. Their Texas Secretary of State during the summer and afterwards said that this was the cleanest and most efficient fraud-free election ever held under very trying circumstances. That being the case, the whole idea that this is to attack or to address election integrity is a misnomer at best, and just a flat out distraction at worst. So in any event, we hope that the legislatures, that the congressmen and senators will listen to the pleas and arguments and evidence that you all are presenting. We know it's going to be a trying couple of days, but we wish you the best, and we appreciate that you guys are fighting for us, both in Austin and in DC. God bless you all.
Thank you,
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Judge. I know that the reps have to go, so does the press have any questions for them before they take off? And then we're going to continue with the statements from our elected officials.
Yes, Jerry, good morning. Oh, sorry, am I talking over someone?
Yeah, this is Dina with the Monitor. Hi, nice to meet you, Santiago. Jared, I've got a question for the reps. What about the news that now the GOP is trying to change the state legislature to operate with a simple majority, so that your guys' leaving won't have an impact in future special sessions?
Go ahead, Alex.
I'm happy to take this. Yeah, that's not the way the Texas Constitution works or our own House rules. I don't see that happening. I think they're just looking for solutions to try to trick us into coming back home. We will not fall for anything like that. We're a little bit smarter.
And let me also say, there's nothing we're doing that's outside the rules of the House. This is our form of filibuster. This is our right to break quorum. It has been done before. And there will be a time where Democrats are in the majority, and you know, they're not going to want to be have this opportunity taken away from them if they want to also be able to use everything within the toolbox. You know, let me make one thing really clear. I'm not running from anything. To come up here is a tremendous sacrifice. Pales in comparison to the sacrifice made by those fighting overseas, but it is a sacrifice from our businesses, from our families, from our lives. We just committed 5 months of hard work to the legislative process, and here we are again with no end in sight, doing what we think is right, our fundamental right to vote. So I'm not running from a fight. I've never run from a fight. This is me fighting. This is us fighting in DC.
Thank you.
Representante Santiago Caicedo del Canal 5, buenos días.
Buenos días.
Para los dos, les quise preguntar también en español, ¿les preocupa que sean detenidos por la policía estatal? Y pues en español, ¿por qué hacen esto? ¿Por qué huyeron de Austin? También si me pudieran repetir esas respuestas en inglés, por favor.
Claro. Sabe, antes que yo era un abogado, yo era un maestro de la historia de Texas, y nunca en la gran historia de Texas hemos tenido un parte de legislación, una proposición que era tan buena que necesitaba el gobernador de Texas a ordenar el arresto de más de 50 miembros de la legislativa. Te digo, este piso de esta legislación, perdón, está mal. No representa las cosas que tejanos, gente de aquí, quiere. Y claro, tampoco es algo que quiere los Estados Unidos. No es para nosotros. Quiere discriminar contra gente de color.
And Santiago, maybe during some downtime, Alex can teach me better Spanish. But
mine's not that great right now. That's a good question.
I understand Spanish very well. But,
Practice makes perfect.
There you go. There you go. There you go. That's right. So
I can repeat it in English, and then how about that?
Yeah.
I used to be a Texas history teacher, and never in the history of Texas was a piece of legislation, a bill so good that it needed the governor of Texas to order more than 50 members of the House of Representatives to be arrested. I'm not afraid to be arrested. I'm here fighting for you. I took a solemn oath to defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Texas. I'm fighting for the rights of my fellow Texans.
And I just wanted to add, Santiago, my entire childhood, I was taken to the polls to vote every election with my dad. I knew all the poll workers. I held signs for my dad and other candidates at the polling sites. My 18th birthday, my dad took me to breakfast and then to go register to vote. That was the coming of age activity in my family. I have a huge family with a ton of cousins and a ton of second cousins, and everybody votes. And the whole family preaches that, not just my father. I remember going to HEB with my dad, and it was election time, and him telling me, God willing, son, one day we can vote as we're checking out and getting our groceries. There was this dream when I was a kid that voting would be done very easily, very accessibly, no matter where we were, right? Even online one day. And so to be moving in the opposite directions with these proposals, I don't understand why this is, they don't feel like they're suppressing Republican votes as well. How drive-throughs or large voting centers or extended hours are a bad thing for any one party. So voting has been a theme of my entire life. And I'm not going to stand by idly and, let someone take someone's right to vote away.
Yeah. There's a question from the chat from Becky Fogel with Texas Newsroom. She's asking, is anyone planning to board the plane chartered by Dade Phelan? I think Alexander Lukashenko may be helping him with that charter, but not sure. Do you want to respond to that?
It's a short answer.
I'm pretty sure it is.
Yet.
Yeah, to avoid explicit language with the press, I'm going to simply say no.
I will say that a helicopter would have fewer empty seats than a whole plane.
I think Mr. Taylor from the Guardian was trying to ask a question.
Yes. Hi, Eddie. Hi, Alex. My question is this. Yeah, hi there. You're up in DC. You're trying to influence the US senators to pass those 2 voter protection bills. How are you getting on with that? What are your chances? Because it seems as though having some legislation at the US level is the only way to undermine what the Republicans are trying to do in Austin. So how are you getting on up there? Will people like Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema end that filibuster to allow that legislation through?
Sure thing, Steve. Beginning with our morning, we came up here certainly very quickly. We were not on anyone's schedule. And yet, beginning with landing at the airport to our press conference that next morning, since then, this group of Texans has met with Majority Leader Chuck Schumer in his office. We've met with Senator Manchin. We'd have the Vice President of the United States sit down with us and discuss and implore us to continue the fight. And we know that the President of the United States certainly has paid attention to us, and his office, the White House office, is in contact with us. And certainly we're on their schedule. These are very important people who have their schedule set weeks ahead of time, and they've made time. They see the fight that we have as Texans, and they know this is important for them. I don't think you get a meeting with Senator Joe Manchin in a couple of days, even if you're not his own constituent, if it's not important to him. I think the needle is moving.
Yeah, and well said, Alex. I think there are 2 big bills that are married to one another right now. That's the transportation bill and the John Lewis Act. And I think that there are going to be negotiations with those 2 bills that I hope will push this forward. We have seen some dialogue coming out of Senator Manchin's office that he is open to a compromise on the voting rights bill. So that's very encouraging. But look, the optics of us being here and getting being able to have the stage we have had has obviously given them reason to pause and to reconsider their non-action to this point. So I think even if we can move the needle a little bit by being here, it was well worth it.
Thank you.
Sí, buenos días.
How you doing?
Sí, buenos
Joaquín.
días. Buenos días, buenos días a toda la gente esta mañana. Representante Domínguez, si nos pudiera comentar en español. Recuérdenos, específicamente, entiendo que esto lo hacen principalmente por la iniciativa del gobernador sobre elecciones. Recuérdenos, ¿a qué se oponen? ¿Por qué llegaron a este punto de salir de Texas? Y también, pues efectivamente, como comentaba hace unos minutos mi compañero, ¿no tienen temor de que los vayan a arrestar, de que los vayan a obligar a regresar al Capitolio?
Sabes que por diferentes tiempos en la historia de los Estados Unidos, habían muchas personas que los han arrestado, han golpeado y a veces han asesinado, porque ellos pelearon por el derecho del voto para otras gentes. Ese voto puede ser para la gente que eran de África, podría ser gente como mujeres, puede ser del color de nosotros. No es tan lejos en el tiempo que aquí en este país, policía, hombres con armas, con batas, pegándole a la gente, porque pelearon por el derecho de voto. Claro, no tengo ese miedo que me van a golpear. Si me arrestan, me arrestan. Yo estoy aquí para pelear por los derechos de gente como los que vinieron antes que dieron este derecho a mí. Y les puedo decir que este gobernador, acuérdense que unas 3 semanas pasadas, la primera cosa que él dijo es, le voy a quitar todo el dinero de la rama legislatura. Él es alguien que quiere ordenar a la gente, escucharlos, pero que hacen las cosas que él quiere a fuerza. Él no representa las cosas que la gente de Texas y de los Estados Unidos representan. Él ahorita está perdido.
El juez Eduardo Treviño, Treviño, si nos pudiera comentar también en español el motivo por el que usted y otros representantes públicos están apoyando en esta ocasión pues la acción de los legisladores demócratas.
Joaquín, creo que él está en una junta ahora y está dividiendo su tiempo, pero posiblemente otro de los oficiales que está presente quiere responder a esta pregunta. Si no, yo me voy a responder. Trey or Sylvia, y'all want to respond to that?
Sure. Gracias, Joaquín. Sobre la pregunta, yo creo que es importante porque lo que estamos haciendo nosotros y lo que están haciendo los representantes en Washington es pelear por los derechos de todos los tejanos que tenemos aquí, los ciudadanos de Bronzeville, los ciudadanos del condado de Cameron y la verdad los ciudadanos de Texas. Y en veces hay que pelear por los derechos de todos. Representan a todos, representan a las personas aquí en Texas. Entonces, lo que está pasando es, obviamente los republicanos en Texas están tratando de quitar ciertos derechos de votar por varias personas en el estado de Texas y ellos tuvieron que irse del estado para pelear por nosotros y están negociando diferentes cosas en Washington y para eso los apoyo 100% y sinceramente. Gracias.
Mayor Mendez, could you say that again in English, please?
Sure. I think it's important that Representative Lucio and Representative Dominguez are in Washington fighting for the rights of all Texans, certainly their constituents, for the citizens of Cameron County. And like I said in Spanish, I mean, there comes a time where you have to fight for the rights of everybody that you represent. I mean, that's the fundamental reason they were elected by the folks at Cameron County. And this is a time when this is a time for action. And I don't think anybody doubts their intentions. They feel that what is being proposed by the Republicans in Texas is, like Representative Lucio said, voter suppression. and it's very clearly voter suppression. The intent behind that, you'd have to ask the Republicans here in Texas as to what they're trying to accomplish. But if you looked at the legislative agenda for the special session, it's pretty clear where the majority is trying to go. And if you looked at the session during the last several months, the priorities were pretty much askew. And the priorities were very much party line priorities rather than priorities that would have ensured better quality of life for all Texans. So I think Representative Lucio and Representative Dominguez are doing an admirable job representing the interests of not only Cameron County, but representing the interests of Texas. And I fully support their battle and their efforts in Washington to try and get comprehensive federal reform for voting. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think anybody could say it clearer than what Mayor Mendez just said. We were in session for 140 days. And when it came down to the last month, at least, they certainly didn't move any legislation that would have helped our teachers, our retired teachers, our school officials. They did nothing to help ensure that the energy grid in the state of Texas is secure. And we saw just a couple of weeks later with the first mild heat wave warning Texans to raise their air conditioner to 78 degrees. I'll tell you, that bill that was initially proposed watered down to a mere study. There was no appetite at all.
Wow.
I hope that you'll forgive me. I'm about to get into my next appointment. It's been a busy day. Certainly, I don't know if y'all know this, we'll let them know. Congressman Favela visited this morning, again, to speak with us, not just about this issue, but we also had a great time to talk about the infrastructure bill that's before Congress right now, making sure that South Texas will be represented. They will get their fair share, and we want to thank him for all his work on this as well. We want to talk about this area is very important because what we're doing right now is going to be affecting redistricting in the future. What will Congressional District 34 look like? What will CD 15 look like? It's important what we're doing here. And I want to thank you. I want to thank you all very much, not just as public officials. Not everybody knows how elections are run, but the people that are in this room right now know how elections are run. And they're run in a bipartisan fashion. They're fair, they're effective. We need to encourage more people to come out and vote. This bill would disenfranchise not just people from voting, but people who want to work as poll workers. And we know that's very important to have them. Our poll workers are typically our retired teachers, retired librarians, people who make time. Even our winter Texans volunteer at times. So I want to thank you all very much. Unfortunately, I do have to get going, but thank you so much. I'll keep me in your prayers and keep the fight.
Thank you for everything you're doing there, State Rep. We really
appreciate it. Both of what you and Representative.
Both of you are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you, Jared.
Yes, sir.
And, you know, Jared, if I also could just say, I want to thank all of y'all back home for being vocal in your support of us and what we're doing up here. It's important because, you know, as you can imagine, you know, we're being criticized in a big way and complimented. I don't want to, you know, fail to appreciate those that have reached out and said, we're proud of you, you're doing the right thing. So look forward to getting home. I'm not sure when that is. And I want to thank all of y'all for your service as well.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Rob.
Cameron County, we wish you luck, and we stand behind you 100%.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And to the members of the press, please forgive my attire. I didn't pack well. I ran out of clothes. I need to find something nearby, but thank you again. Have a good one.
Press, it's a great store there. I'll recommend it. That's where I go.
Bye-bye.
All right. So again, thanks. We're going to have a few little more comments from our elected officials. And just for the record, you know, some people have dropped off, but we had the majority of our commissioners court, the majority of our countywide elected officials on the conference this morning, including our sheriff, Eric Garza. We had Commissioner Gus Ruiz. Judge Trevino was on earlier. He's splitting between a meeting. And so we're really proud to have this strong support for our legislative delegation who are up there doing their job. I think that's a critical point to make. You know, they're exercising their constitutional duties. We have a governor who doesn't believe in the Constitution. He is trying to coerce a co-equal branch of government, and he's threatened them with arrest. He's tried to remove the funding for innocent people who are just there doing their jobs in order to, and holding them hostage in order to try to coerce our legislators to basically be party to bills, not just this voting rights, this voting bill, but other bills that would do real harm to real people. If you look at what's proposed in SB1, you have severe criminal penalties for small mistakes. If a teenager registers to vote 31 days before their 18th birthday instead of 30 days, that's a felony. If a voter doesn't want a poll watcher to look over their shoulder and see how they vote, that's a felony. If a judge tells somebody who's disrupting the polling place to get out and stop it, that's a felony. You know, we have the prospect of having voter purges every 30 days. You know, we thought it was bad enough in 2019 when the Secretary of State had to resign because they did a voter purge. Now they want to do it every month. We also have the prospect of Cameron County, just Cameron County alone, having to spend more than $5 million to upgrade its voting equipment. Statewide, the cost would exceed $100 million. And so, you know, we have Republicans that love to talk about unfunded mandates, that love to talk about fiscal responsibility, yet they're the same people who are holding this wasteful and unnecessary legislative session. They're the folks who could have passed bills like the 13th check for the teachers, who could have done things on property tax relief during the regular session, but they refused to do it. There was a bill on the floor to give a 13th check to the teachers. They didn't vote for it. Now they want to have the special session, run up a big tab, and try to blame it on us. The truth of the matter is, there is one thing that the legislature can do without a quorum, and that's adjourn. And that's what they need to do. The legislature needs to adjourn. The Republicans have it within their power to stop this farce, to stop this attack on our Constitution. All they need to do is adjourn, and the Governor Abbott can rescind his veto of the legislative appropriation.
Jared, si nos pudiera brindar esos comentarios en español, por favor, gracias.
Sí, cómo que no. Pues lo que estaba diciendo es que nuestros representantes estatales están en el Capitolio y ya están llevando a cabo sus funciones públicas, sus funciones propios como representantes estatales. La legislatura es una rama del gobierno igual como la rama ejecutivo o la rama judicial. Y lo que está proponiendo o intentando el gobernador es tomar el puesto o el aspecto del dictador, de imponer sus deseos a otra rama independiente del gobierno, de quitar los fondos de personas inocentes y usarlos como hostajes para que le pueden forzar a la legislatura a pasar actos que son en contra de los intereses del público de Texas. Y solamente hablando del acto de legislación de votación, eso tienen propuestos de hacer penas criminales muy severas para cosas que son pecados. Por ejemplo, si un joven de 18 años registró a votar 31 días en lugar de 30 días antes de su fecha de nacimiento, le pueden tener una cargo de felonía. Si un votante no quiso que una persona que está viendo su boleto y ellos quieren mantener la privacidad de su voto, le pueden tomar cargos en contra del votante, no la persona que está amenazando o acusando al votante. Si un juez del casilla quieren quitar a una persona que está interrumpiendo la votación, ellos pueden enfrentar cargos de felonía. No la persona que está interrumpiendo, no la persona que están intentando de prevenir a las personas a votar, pero a la persona que está intentando de mantener una elección seguro y una elección justo. Y eso es lo que estamos batallando. La otra cosa es que ellos quieren quitar personas del voter roll cada 30 días. En lugar de cada vez al año. Y no sé si ustedes recuerdan lo que pasó en 2019 cuando quitaron bastantes personas sin razón y eso resultó que muchas personas no pueden votar cuando son y ellos son elegibles a votar. Y es algo que quisiéramos parar. Y es muy importante que la gente sepa que el costo de esta sesión de la legislatura es la culpa de los republicanos. Ellos tienen durante la sesión regular la oportunidad de pasar alivio de los impuestos, de pasar que se llama el 13th check, un bono a los maestros jubilados. Y por hecho, había una legislación, un acto que está en el piso de la Cámara y ellos no votaron para pasarlo. Y ahora quieren decir que, bueno, eso tenemos esa sesión para pasar este bono a los maestros jubilados. Es una farsa, son charlatanes. Eso no es cierto. La única cosa, ellos tienen en sus manos el poder de parar este circo, ese farso. Ellos le pueden negar la sesión. Ellos tienen el poder de hacer esto y parar este desgaste de recursos públicos y este golpe a la orden constitucional del Estado. Sylvia, were you going to say something?
No, well, my comment would be, thanks for sharing all that information, Jared. I think everything you said is correct. What I want to say to the press is that it's not about the voter ID, and people don't seem to understand that. This is about us giving everyone the same equal opportunity, whether you're young, whether you're middle-aged, whether you're older, the opportunity to have that right to vote. And when you read this bill, it really lashes out against Texans. And, you know, we just went through a major pandemic. And one of the biggest things we did is come up with creative ideas to get people to get to the polls. So now they want to do away with the drive-up voting. What if we go through another pandemic again? What are we going to do? We're all going to be charged with a felony because we're organizing people to drive up and vote. I mean, these things are not what we stand for. They're not what Texas is all about. It's not what we want. We've already been through many suppressions of voting when Blacks couldn't vote, like Mayor Mendez was saying earlier, women not being able to vote. As a woman, I feel that it's my obligation to find and identify ways to encourage young people to vote, to encourage everyone to vote. And what the governor is doing up in Texas is not what we want. It's not what Texas stands for. It's not what we in the Valley want. It's not what we are supporting. So I just want to say, I'm 100% behind what Representative Dominguez and Representative Lucio are doing up there. Very proud of their work, very proud of them taking a stand and standing up against those that are just trying to slaughter Texas in half. We can't stand for that. And Jared, thank you so much for getting all of us together, because I think in unity, we can speak louder, but we can't allow this to happen. The bill is not just about voter ID. There's a lot of things that are attached to that bill. And I think that's what people need to understand. The biggest message out there is that people are getting the wrong idea, thinking it's about identification, and it's not that. It's about trying to find ways to prevent people from voting. And that's not right. It's not fair. And I'm not going to stand for it. So again, to the representatives, thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. And speaking of ID, that's true, because there's no question about voter ID being in place. But what the bill does call for is for voters, if they vote by mail, they would have to either provide their driver's license number or their social security number. Imagine the risk that places for identity theft. Imagine the burden and the intimidation that places on a voter. And if a voter is disabled,
exactly. As a county,
go ahead.
As a county clerk, I mean, we already have, papers that get filed in our courts. And, we always tell people when they file their records, look, if you put your social security number here, if you have a driver's license here, it becomes public information. I mean, what is it that they want to do, especially now for this bill to require someone to have to provide that if it gets lost in the mail or something? We already have all that going on already. So as an elected official who receives a lot of legal documents, we're already telling the public, be aware that this is on there. If you don't take it off, it becomes public information. Is that what we're going to be moving to? Because if they're worried about voter fraud, well, there's going to be a lot more fraud with what's going to happen.
Yeah. And then the other thing it requires, if you vote by mail and you claim a disability, you have to bring a letter from your doctor. And so, imagine the burden that places on someone who's already struggling with medical issues. And the violation of their privacy.
I agree with you on that 100%, because where in the world if I have a disability and my disability is something that has to do with my brain, I mean, why do I have to tell people, hey, you know what, I'm disabled? I mean, that's something very private and very personal. And for people to have to claim, here's my disability and provide you proof. I mean, there's a lot of disabilities. There's speaking disabilities, hearing disabilities. I mean, now people are gonna have to walk around with a card and tell you, here I am, I wanna vote because I'm disabled. That violates the constitutional privacy. I mean, come on.
Yeah, you have people that are handicapped that they want to keep that to themselves, you know. So it's something that is their right, and it's wrong to have that taken from them.
You know, Jared, I find it disingenuous on the part of our governor, who through a tragic accident became disabled, and for him now to put roadblocks for people to come out and vote and making it difficult for them. I mean, really and truly, is that what a leader, the head of our state, for him to be behind this is really, to say the least, hypocritical. And I find it really, really hard to believe that people would actually support this type of legislation, because you know that we have people out here that if they wanted to vote absentee, they don't have the money to go to the doctor and get a doctor to sign for them that they are disabled. I mean, making it very, very hard for them.
Thank you, Sophie. That's very true. And you know, Sophie is a young lady, but she also saw the dawning of the voting rights era, because she worked for our first Hispanic county judge who was elected. That was her first job. She was his secretary. And so she saw what it meant for people to be able to choose their own representatives and be able to vote, and what difference that had. And so now we see all the progress that's happened during her lifetime, and now it stands to be taken away. Are there any other questions from the press?
Sí, Jerry, pues le iba a preguntar o pedir a la comisionada si pudiera repetir sus comentarios en español, pues lo que acabo de decir, si pudiera hacerlo de manera bien breve.
Claro que sí. Lo que comentaba es que al oír al gobernador que a través de un accidente trágico, él quedó incapacitado. Ahora quiere pasar legislación donde requerirían que si yo quiero votar y estoy incapacitado, que tengo que ir y agarrar un doctor que firme que estoy incapacitado. Bueno, para él no es problema, porque él tiene los recursos, pero las personas, no todo el mundo tiene esos recursos de poder gastar en ir a que un doctor firme un documento para que me dé a mí la habilidad de poder votar porque estoy incapacitada. Para mí eso es ingenuo, especialmente cuando es el gobernador, el encabezado de este estado, que quiera él obligar a personas que tomen todos estos requisitos y bloquearlos de poder votar.
Gracias, señora.
Anybody else? Well, if not, I thank you all for coming, and I just want to also acknowledge we have one of our other county chairs in Texas, Mal Torres from Live Oak County, on the call with us. So thank you, Mal, for joining us, and thank you for all of our elected officials, Commissioner Benavides, Commissioner Ruiz, who joined us, Judge Trevino, Sheriff Garza, our County Clerk Sylvia Garza Perez, Mayor Trey Mendez, of course, our two state reps, Alex Dominguez and Eddie Lucio. Thank you to all of them for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And Cameron County does stand in solidarity with our state reps up in Washington, D.C. who are doing their job. And of course, all of us as elected officials stand in solidarity with the voters. And that's who we're working today to protect their rights and preserve those rights. So thank you to the press for helping us get this word out. And everybody have a great day.
Listo, muchas gracias. Que tengan buen día.
No, muchas gracias a ustedes.